So I listened to the internet, and the internet told me that I should buy this violin or maybe that violin. And I went to the violin shop, locked myself in a room, wore a mask, and I tried out a whole bunch of violins. I made the mistake, or it wasn't my mistake actually, but the first violin I tried was a $7,000 violin that was in the wrong spot, and the violin shop thought that it was a $2,000 violin. So yeah, everything that I played after that just was not the same. But I did find some interesting violins, and as you know, I brought them home. Now, the whole story though is before all of this, and before I listened to what people said on the internet, probably getting paid for your clicking and going to various websites to buy them online, I sent out an email to a violin maker by the name of Kim Tipper. And Kim told me that I should find myself an old violin, and one that has a story, one that has a history, instead of spending my money on a Chinese violin. And at first I listened to the internet. And you know what? None of the violins really talk to me. It's kind of, I think, a lot like in Star Wars when a Jedi Knight is going to get their lightsaber, and the Kyber crystal that's going to be in the lightsaber has to speak to them. So, and the reason I know this is because I went into another violin shop that sold some consignments. The purpose being trying to find another one of these brand new Chinese-made violins that everybody talks about on the internet. And in that shop, they had a bunch of consignment violins. And what blew me away is one of the first violins I saw on the wall there was this old-looking violin. And I didn't give it much thought at first. I just gravitated towards the Eastman violin, and I didn't like it. It was a pretty expensive violin too. I didn't like it. It had no soul. It didn't talk to me. And that's not to say it's not a good violin. The one I brought home is a nice violin. This one is a nice violin. The thing is, though, I played that one and I was like, wow, this is nice. And then I'm like, I should try out some other violins. Grabbed an old violin off the wall, and it blew me away. It blew me away to beyond what I would ever imagined. It is an old violin that it was being sold on consignment by a retired musician, I don't know who, and he was selling a few violins there. There was one from 1920, which was a beautiful old violin that if all I played was fiddle music, it would have been amazing. It was $1,000 and 100 years old, and it had been through some living. But the one that I tried that was a Stradivarius copy, out of all the violins that were there, nothing came close to it. And I brought somebody with me to listen with another set of ears to what sounded best. I tried this old violin versus I think it was an $8,000 violin. I tried this old violin versus some brand new violins, this old violin versus this really beautiful handmade violin that, I wouldn't have mind having either, but none of them came close. And long story short, I have myself a new violin. It is right here. Check this out. Isn't that beautiful? So, what I found out later, after sending photos and things like that to Mr. Tipper, was that from his estimation, it is probably at least 100 years old, probably older. He thinks that it's probably 19th century. And adding to that, on the back of the violin, at some point, somebody scratched on to the top, right near the shoulder, 1890. So I'm thinking maybe it is somewhere around in 1890. And this thing is absolutely stunning. The case it came with is a beautiful case. I'll show you in another video someday. But as for this violin, it is just astonishing just how good it actually is. Just fantastic. So, my advice to you is, if you are going to get yourself a new violin, maybe it's your first real violin, like this one is for me, I have to tell you, follow Mr. Tipper's advice and find yourself an old violin. This thing, I can't even imagine the stories it could tell me. I can't imagine what it's been through. I can't imagine the people that loved it, but I sure love it. So try that out. My advice would be exactly that. Find yourself an old violin that just talks to you, you know, and if you can't find one that talks to you, wait, right? Wait until you find one that does speak to you. And the other thing is, I'd recommend you bring somebody with you who can be a second set of ears. And if you find one you like, play it against other violins, including ones that are way out of your price range. I wasn't about to spend $8,000 on a violin. This one, it was less than $2,000, right? So, beautiful violin for, honestly, a steal. I don't know too much about it. All I know is that it's beautiful. It played better than all the other violins in the shop. It had a nicer tone than the more expensive violins. And it makes me happy. At the end of the day, what more can you want, man? So there you go. I have to come up with a name for him. He's definitely an old guy, and he deserves a cool name. I don't know what else to say. I'm still blown away. This is only my second day with him, and I'm absolutely blown away that I found this violin. I'm blown away at the sound that comes out of it. And more than that, I'm blown away how much better I sound playing a good violin. The one that I had before, it served its purpose. It was an entry into playing violin and see how much I like it, or if I liked it. And it turned out that I absolutely love playing violin, and I'll always love that violin. But this, I know, this is my lightsaber. So, take my advice, shop around. It's not to say that these other violins aren't great. I'm sure they are, and it's not to say that you won't love brand new violin. I'm sure you will. But there's something about an old man like this and the music that he makes.